Jackson.
I said, I'm
Did
gonna
it
get
work?
railed. That's what I'm learning.
Hi, Portia.
Hi, babies. I need you all the next time that you go live together to do like multi lives instead of co-host, so you can see everybody's comments.
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
we don't know
that's
what that. We didn't know how.
I didn't want us. I didn't want one of us to be tiny.
It doesn't have to be. It's a setting. I'll talk. Like I'll show you. Because Rebecca and
Thank
I
you,
do like. Come on,
Portia.
Max. Rebecca and I do
Yeah,
lives all the time, and we're side by side.
Thank you,
because
Portia. We
yeah,
need your
we
help.
don't know how to internet.
Yeah, we're too young. We don't know how to internet.
If you don't shut
Legit.
up. Mikey, I'm so proud of you for these conversations. Like you're stepping out into the thing and doing all this stuff. Jax, get up here. Um, it's good. This is good. I also don't believe. I think that heterosexuality is a myth.
Yes.
Ooh.
Um,
It's the default. I just made videos about cisness being the default. It's not an identity, it's a mindset. It's an
and
agreement with yourself.
it's a default due to society. It's not the actual default. Like heterosexuality just ties into heteronormative thinking. So it's what you're taught. Like that's the indoctrination that we are all taught, or the majority of us, especially if you're 30 and up, right? But if you think about it, if you have somebody of the same gender or a gender that's not the direct opposite of yours, and you have this moment, you're like, they are really attractive, they're really fucking hot, I'd like to kiss them. The moment that you think about any type of like, and not even physical because there's different nuts, but the minute it goes beyond just like acknowledgement of their beauty and thinking like, huh, you stepped outside of heteronormativity. Like
Mm.
heterosexuality is bullshit. Doesn't mean that you have to act on any one thing. And like you, is it Ceci? Am I saying it right?
Cece.
Cece, like you said, you don't have to have a label. There's no label. You don't, and I think that's what also trips a lot of people up. Is like, am I gay? Am I straight? Am I bi? Am I pan? Am I XYZ? And at the end of the day, you don't have to label yourself, and you don't have to subscribe to anybody's label that they try to give you. Because a lot of times, if somebody is trying to label you, that's their own bullshit. They're not ready to look at.
And also, so many labels are like because they are just to describe I am other than the norm. Because,
Yes.
like, and you don't owe
Mm.
anybody that. You don't have to define yourself by the norm. And I spent the last couple of years as a freshly few years out queer trying to figure out some labels. And I've recently arrived at the conclusion after subscribing to just feeling gender fucked in terms of a gender identity. I'm just like, I want it all. I want all of it. And I now find that there isn't a label that feels like it really summarizes stuff that's currently being used in like mainstream language. So I default to like non-binary, I default to lesbian, even though I don't like, I'm more like T for T than like lesbian. But
Mm-hmm,
all of
mm-hmm.
these labels are really just an attempt in our colonizer language to describe a liberated ideal that isn't formed in this language, in this society, in this country.
See,
And
I
it
think
still
for
puts people in a box. It
see,
still
I
puts people in a
get that,
box.
and I get that. I think for me though, I think I'm like trying to almost like use the label because so much thinking at this point is much of the is more in theory than in practice, right? As we all know, I'm intellectualizing a lot more than I'm feeling, right? And so I don't know. I feel like I'm thinking about the label or the potential or opportunities of different labels or whatever the case may be as almost direction because on my own I won't move.
Sure.
Okay, I can see that. I can see that for a brain pathing type situation. So for you individually, that makes sense. It all comes back to what you're going to do with your individual self. If it works for you to have a label to understand what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're going to do next, then absolutely have that. But that means that's your label. And that's what you've decided for yourself. Nobody else gets to define that for you. Nobody else gets to change it or say that you're not doing it the right way. That's bullshit. Like, you have to do what makes the most sense for you. And when you do that, you get this beautiful moment of awakening because you stop listening to all that fucking noise about like what makes the most sense. I will be 44 years old this year. I have identified as a lesbian since I was 17 years old. Um, And as of recently, probably in the last couple of years, I've been describing myself more as queer because my attraction has shifted a little bit, right? I will always love women. That is something that will never, ever change. But finding like attraction to non-binary people, gender fluid people, gender queer people, like that changes the label or the definition of how I've been describing myself. And queer makes sense because like you said, Ceci, queer is just anything outside of heteronormative. And that's where I lie.
But here's the thing, like also, because I've experienced very little, and the thing is, I don't really think too much about like, I'm thinking about just in like the last 5 years of my life, because really that's when I'm like living on my own and I feel kind of more on like whatever. But when I'm thinking about those 5 years and like I've just experienced such attraction in those 5 years that it feels like I cannot define it for myself. I'm not having experiences to help me, and so I'm getting stuck in this over intellectualizing loop, right? Or jumping into things, or in my brain, like skipping steps, right? Like it's like, girl, like no one needs you to talk about eating cooch if you can't look a woman in the eye, right? Like what is happening here?
Those aren't always directly correlated. I'm going to ask you a question though.
I'm trying to look you in the eye though, Portia. Or Ceci. I mean, we just talked about liking T for T, so I'm out of that. But like, they may know somebody who knows somebody, and then we could. I mean, what's up, Portia?
I know that you talked about like needing, like the label helps you define what's next, right? Mm-hmm. I'm like, I love a reframe. I love like reframing thinking and everything. Why do you need direction for what's next? Will it fuck up your brain?
Well, because
just let what happens.
The labels are, to define away from the norm. So I think that like it's that first layer. Like I feel like I kind of get it, because if you don't have the completely thrown out the window, like normativity, like we don't need this anymore, then if all you need is like what is other than this, I think that's why the label sometimes is the next step in the pipeline.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes. That's good. That's good. If you, Mayte, if you were to...
Don't make that sound.
Should I go? Should I leave y'all alone?
There has to be...
I'm just in a delicate state. It's medicinal.
It's medical.
There's a space between, there has to be a space between I've been straight my entire life and now I'm queer. There's something, and it's not like it's going to drive me insane. Like it's going to drive me nutty until I come to it.
Is that where community comes in? Is that really what it is?
Yeah, it's like if you can find a solid community that recognizes that you are in a place of, I have no idea what the fuck I am thinking, I have no idea what the fuck I'm feeling, and you have community that supports you, and like you don't have to know that stuff right now. You just have to feel it as it comes up. Like feel the feels. This is any other type of like healing journey, growth, development, learning from our past. Like you feel the feelings when they happen, and as long as you are being responsible and respectful to yourself and to anybody else that might cross your path, then you're doing it in an honorable way. If you can have the conversation of, you meet somebody or you have an attraction to somebody and you're talking back and forth and you share that attraction and you also say, I have no idea what my sexuality is right now. I just know that you're attractive. I don't know what that means. I don't know if we're going to do anything. I am letting you know that I'm attractive. If you find something that you feel safe with to do that, absolutely. You have no idea which direction it can go. But it is about community. You need people to talk to this stuff about. You have a beautiful community built here online. I think that you've been creating, and we've talked about this a little bit, you've been creating some really beautiful conversations. And it starts off a lot with you just asking a question like, am I gay?
Yeah.
Can I handle DP? Like all these questions that you ask that are just... all these questions that you
Portia,
ask.
if you paying attention to me like this, then I might need to come to Chicago. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I ship
if you
it.
trying to pay
I
attention
ship
to me
it.
like this, Portia,
ship
you could.
it.
I mean, you can pay attention to me if you want.
So like these questions that you're asking, they are making other people
I know
feel
she
safe.
got it.
So okay. I'm gonna clean it up a little bit. So a lot of things that I do, like in work, whether it's corporate world or my own stuff, is I work in like training, development, all that good stuff. So I think that I lost that thought just real quick. Holy fuck. Nope. It's gone. That went.
Distracting.
What was I saying? Development. I don't know. It'll come back to me.
Neurodivergent minds.
Yeah. That shit just like went like flying right out of my head. We're talking about, oh, okay, here's the question. I got it. It came back. When you ask questions like that, a lot of things that I would say when I'm doing trainings, and I like, does anybody have a question? And everybody's quiet. Nobody wants to raise their hand. And I will always say, somebody else has the question that you have.
Ooh. Yes, I always say this.
Somebody else has the question that you have.
I like that.
And you asking it just opens up that conversation, right?
Yeah. I've said that too. Like if you having a thought confirms that somebody else has had that thought.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's a thing
there aren't a lot of.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, there's not a lot of original questions. once you find anybody that's willing to have expansive thinking in any level, like any conversation, there aren't a lot of original thoughts. And that is not to say that people aren't original and that they don't have their own thought process, but the core of what the question is often the same. Like if you're questioning what we've been taught is normal, somebody else is thinking that same thing.
In fact, many of us and many of them would love to come to New York and service you in your apartment.
We could, you know what I see all the time on the TikTok that I would never do, but I would do it for you, is a speed dating session.
Someone just suggested that actually in my comments, and they were like, have you thought about speed dating or doing speed dating or like doing that?
I have run an online speed date group at the beginning of the pandemic. I was running Zoom Sapphic speed date sessions for like a good year and a half.
I feel like I remember that, like, and cross paths with you.
Really? It was on Facebook.
Then no, that is not true. It was another queer.
Probably not me. I wasn't doing anything cool on TikTok back then.
Off topic, your hair has grown back so fast, and I love it.
I know. Oh, I did this with a highlighting cap myself.
But you shaved it. Was it a year ago that you shaved it?
It was last June, almost exactly a year
They
ago.
were bald.
Wow.
Like they were buzzed. Like this side,
I kept
right?
buzzing it. I buzzed it for months. I cut it back over and over again for months. I only started letting it grow back in like October or November.
That's wild.
I know. Look at all this. I got little curls starting to come in the back if I put a little extra water on it, try to give it some texture.
Here's what I also love about Mayte questioning everything is that you have like unintentionally created 3 thirst traps in this very live. The power you hold, Mayte, the power you hold. You just have to use it in the right way.
Portia told me "good girl" once in a comment, and it was a wrap. Whatever Portia wants.
Yeah, I do remember Portia posting some sort of very soothing voice, good girl kind of video, and I was like, "Get out of here! Do not do that today."
No, earlier when you were saying the sentence, you were like, "Oh, do you want someone to tell you what to do?" And you finished it, but I was like, "I do want someone to tell me what to do."
That's called BDSM, baby. That's different.
I mean,
Amy Beth is like, that was things to me. That video where I said "good girl" and I gave everybody 24 hours. It's still it's tucked away. It's still on the TikTok. It's just privated.
Fair. Mayte, we can have another conversation about being submissive next time, because that's a
big conversation. That's a big word for Elmo.
Lord. That's another thing that's been so like that's one of the things about like reading books, honestly, that like I never thought about truly like kink or exploring kink or any kind of conversations until I started reading books, right? And I know that books
I
aren't
agree.
instructional at all, right? It's very much fiction. So like, but like figuring out like the what exists in the real world, I'm like, oh my God, is that a thing? And then like that just seems like a complicated thing to even think about, right? So like again, I feel like I have such like if I'm here in the making eye contact and the flirting stage, the idea of investigating like even the kink things when I haven't even been able to get like really have sex and like get laid if I wanted to, right? Like in the past couple of years, it's like that is excessive. But I feel like that's gonna be like important for at a point because I'm like I do feel like again I told you earlier like I feel really sexually inexperienced, and so part of me is like, how do you like I don't know. It feels like trying to tackle too much at like one time when I'm thinking about all of it like
You
at
know,
once.
that's the thing. It is too much to think about at one time because you just can't intellectualize your desires. Like you can to an extent, but you
Stop,
can't right
stop.
now
You know
because
what?
you're
Enough. Goodbye. Cut the
okay.
fuck. Stop. No, cut the fucking cameras.
you
Enough. No, I'm
you
not.
you
Why
gotta
did
you
I join
gotta
this live?
go.
Why did I agree
You
to this?
you gotta we're gonna read you for filth. You gotta go to it. You gotta find a person who you're like, I want you to touch these parts of me, and then you go see what comes out of it, if anything, because you know what, Maite, it's not overwhelming. This is you have exciting things ahead. You have
Yeah.
pleasure and discovery and delight ahead of you in your journey. Like thinking about the things that I've gotten to like experience over the last few years as I've come out and started to like get more into it. You have delicious things ahead. And I think that like I understand you're overwhelmed because I relate as someone who has ADHD and possibly OCD and ruminates. It's easy to go, "Oh God, there's so much to do. There's so much to learn." But as wise Portia likes to reframe, you really have so much pleasure and
I want,
delight and discovery ahead.
yes, I want you, if you have not read the book, Pleasure
I just thought
Activism,
that I want you, and I was like, yes.
the book
Guys!
Pleasure Activism.
Baby, use them words carefully.
It's always that pause. Pleasure Activism by Adrienne Marie Brown.
I
I
need to
want you
read
to read
that
that
too.
book.
Yes, yes.
Have you read it?
I have.
Yeah.
I've seen bits
I
of
have to
it.
reread it. I have to reread it because I read it like a couple of years
Reread
ago.
it where your head is now. And
Yeah.
there are things like Ceci said, you have so much pleasure on the other side of this confusion. And the invite that I'm going to give you is, as much as you're trying to intellectualize it, because you strike me as somebody that needs an answer, or that likes an answer, or likes a why. And sometimes that why is found in the step by step. So, you find somebody that you trust, you can have these conversations with. Maybe even find somebody that you trust that's also thinking about things, questioning things, or find somebody that you just want to fuck and say, go for it. Right? Like, I mean, when it comes down to sex, you know what you like. You know how to communicate, so you know how to ask questions. Ask the questions. I think that's another thing that's wrong with heteronormative sex is that there's not questions asked. Everybody's expecting, and this is coming from somebody that has not had heterosexual sex, but has heard a lot about it. But there's a lot of very limited foreplay, a lot of P&V, a couple of pumps, and everybody's done.
It's like
And
that's
if
where the
that,
communication stops. Like that was one of actually the things that like one of the things that TikTok did for me, and I apologize for interrupting you, Portia. Was like I didn't realize how limited my view of sex was until I started hearing queer people talk about having sex, and then I was like, all of that is sex. Oh Lord! Or like how much communication there is, and
there's
like
so
in
much.
heteronormative sex is where the communication goes to die.
Yes. I think that a lot of people, so especially lesbians, will talk about like sex for hours. That is a myth that's sometimes true that people talk about, but it's because sex is defined so many different ways. If you were limiting it to 5 minutes foreplay, P&V, everybody's done, then of course sex is a 10-minute act. And if that's what you want, fantastic. If you like that long-lasting event, that's communication, that's spending some time, that's being attentive, that is paying attention to what the other person wants and likes.
Banter.
And it can go for a longer period of time. There's a lot of pleasure on the other side. Just keep asking questions.
And go touch some people. You got to meet up. I know that this is a touchy subject, womp womp, but you gotta get out there and you gotta find some people who give you some tinglies, and you gotta touch your skin against their skin, even if it's just like a hand brush. You gotta just get some chemistry flowing and some dopamine going. So
I was talking about. Let's talk about Grey's Anatomy. That's a safe topic. But I was talking about that scene where Derek comes up behind Meredith and has the breath on the neck.
Sorry, I hate
okay, so let somebody do that to you. Like, clearly that works for you. Like, I just watched you melt. So, like, let somebody.
No, that's from imagining it, from reading it in my books. I told you that never happened to me, and I told you I needed to find the traffic and go.
You've never had the.
No.
Okay, so
find some ways. People who did not like me.
If you are not, and I know that you're
like me.
I know that you're not touch aversive. Is that a word?
No.
Anyway, yeah, it is, right? Why does that sound weird in my head? I know that you're not anti-touch. I'm going to say that because I don't like the way the other words sound in my head. So I know that you're not anti-touch. So, like Ceci said, a graze of the hand, just touching the skin. Like, there are certain ways where you can feel something with a touch on the shoulder. Like, if somebody touches you here and you feel it there, that's a good thing. That also doesn't mean that anybody has to go racing there. That just lets you know. It's like your little alert system. Like, I like this. Because you can have those things too. There's also this thing that's really if you're down for it, being aroused without knowing that you're going to have sex is also pretty empowering.
That's something I truly want to experience, because I also feel like it's almost trauma, or it has to be, right? But it's like traumatic to always associate like any kind of touch is always going to lead to like sex. And so it's like, if I don't want to have sex, then I have to avoid all touch. And it's like, no, like can that just like, what is it? BDE moves. What is it? Whitney?
Whitney. Yes.
They like when they were talking about like one of the things that they said that was really transformational for me was like to ask yourself, as opposed to feeling like, oh, I'm about to finish or about to whatever, it's like, how long can this just feel good? Like, take the pressure off of it, right? Like, if you don't finish, you don't finish, but like it felt good the entire time, did it not? Right? Like, that's the purpose of it.
That's the purpose. If the only goal of arousal is an orgasm, then that's performative. If that's the only goal. And I think that's something else that a lot of queer relationships with women or femme-identified people have experienced, is that a lot of times, like, you can have the hottest makeout session, which includes like naked body touching, and it stops there, and that can be enough. Because it's not always about the finish line. If the finish line is pleasure, then that finish shows up in different places. It might just be a quick kiss on the cheek before you're running out the door. And then you're like, oh my God, that's gonna last me for the rest of the day. I feel so good, that's fine, right? It can be a text message with a picture like, hey, I'm thinking about you. Pleasure shows up in so many ways, and pleasure is at the core of intimacy.
It's also
and intimacy is at the core of pleasure. Like, they're just so intertwined.
Like, even words like hearing good girl.
Yep. That's another conversation. That's yes, but
that's
next
week. Yes. That's next week's BDSM talk.
Tune in next week for.
But we and like this is, we're gonna get me late. This is all gonna get me late.
So, like, I don't necessarily like yes, kink is tied to BDSM, but not always. Like, sometimes a kink is just what you like.
Right. Well, BDSM is those specific things, and then kink,
that dynamic, that particular
dynamic.
Yeah. A good conversation to have, and Ceci, I would like to have you. I should make a backup page for this conversation, but I think that a lot of people, and this is going way off topic than what you were thinking, but like, a lot of people confuse top and bottom with dom and femme.
Yes.
Those two are not, they're not mutually exclusive. Like,
yeah.
And I think that also scares a lot of people from discovering that side of pleasure for them.
Mm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. This is not at all what I planned on doing on my Thursday, but since
This is kind of spontaneous for us too. We planned to do a live, but then I just messaged her today and was like, "You want to do it today?" And then here we are having a rousing conversation.
Arousing. I see what you did there.
Oh my gosh. I just matched with someone on Tinder recently whose name was PETA, and I messaged them and I said, "Could you PETA love of my life? I might falafel for you."
Did they get it?
They didn't respond for a week. I responded, I said, "Don't punish me." And they finally responded and they said, "Oh, sorry, didn't mean to leave you hanging. Haha, I couldn't come up with a pun to save my life. So creative." And I was like, do I unmatch and block now? Like, if you can't, if that's your statement that you couldn't come up with a pun to save your life, we are not, this is going nowhere.
Those were so good.
Thank you so much. That was
like, you could have had a whole sandwich.
So good.
And my dad used to own a cafe where he made falafels because we're Turkish. It was Cafe Med, and he made falafel sandwiches. And I was like, perfect. Literally, I got these puns in my pocket. I'm ready. Nothing.
Unmatch and block. Like,
I just have left it.
That needed to be appreciated. No,
you deserve better than that.
Thank
you deserve.
I do. I deserve banter.
Yeah.
That was that not the worst comeback to a really good start to banter ever?
I would have I don't think that I would have even acknowledged the fact that I didn't have a good pun. I just would have been like, "You're funny." Like, compliment. Don't.
Like, why would you match and then let me be witty and then not be like, wow. Like, I just gave you such a good opening impression of me, and you're just like, creative. I can't do that. I'm like, I don't know what to do with you.
Oh my God. Someone said that they should have just been like, all of those puns, you know, like they should have just thrown a different pun.
Whoever said that, come on over here. You get it. You get it.
Caroline, you can, but it's a different type of live. There's all individual lives.
Yes, a cornucopia of lives.
There was something else I was gonna say. Fuck, I don't know. I'm also a little bit elevated, so that means that even on my best day where my thoughts are escaping from my brain, they are rapidly running out of my.
It does do that, but I also find that sometimes I have new, deeper, more creative thoughts.
I love that for you.
Me too.
Once my thought is gone, we saw earlier, it just exits. Just
out of here.
Somebody in here said they would have nicknamed you Big Pun. I don't know. This seems like a match.
A big pun?
That was great.
I'm not a hater. I just crush a lot. I'm not a player. I just crush a lot.
I just pun a lot.
Hi. Hello. Welcome.
We're talking about. We're talking. Do you know Mayte?
Well, I'm a fan.
I think we from Rebecca.
Yeah, we're mutuals.
We're mutuals, but I don't think we've ever really interacted much. Fuck.
Do you know Ceci?
Hi, Ceci.
Hi, nice to
I'm
meet
Caroline.
you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Caroline's having a day.
I'm having a day.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, but that's okay.
I might be
Rebecca, if you're in here, you have to go live by yourself and then ask to join.
So we're talking
about sexual awakenings.
Sexual awakenings? Should I talk about the sex I have with my husband?
No.
I don't think so. I think I can keep all that right to myself.
We're helping Mayte. We're building community for Mayte.
Yeah.
And the questions and the discovery and the path to pleasure that you're on. Path to pleasure.
Which is the thing. And I mean, Barry says this to me all the time about pleasure as a practice and being more open to it. And creating more opportunity for it, right? Because even with the touch starvation, it's kind of similar, right? I know that I'm not, I know that touch is really important and I should be seeking touch in all kinds of avenues. And that means that I should also increase the ways that I touch myself, right? Whether, or the ways that my skin is receiving touch and stimulation. So I understand that part. I think it's just really difficult about putting it in practice, right? Like, because I've just spent so, like, we talked about this. I think it's come up a lot in my comments, but it's like being single for so long, I just feel like I just don't even know how to like engage with that kind of point, which is the like with Ceci and with Portia bringing up like the importance of community. It's like I need to find more, like that's gonna give me more opportunities to be around people, so that I can even just like have somewhere to start from. Because I don't know, but it's just weird because I feel like in my mind I'm always like, no, I gotta figure it out and then go out amongst the people. But like I can't figure this out by myself without people.
You gotta get in the field. Go out into
Yeah.
the field.
It's
Do your
just
studying.
scary out there. It's really hard. It's hard. It's like
is hard.
I'm so used to having to figure out everything on my own, or like, and the thing is, it's weird too because I'm comfortable with saying I don't know. I think that's one of my strongest suits in anything. Like, if I don't know, I will just admit it, right? But for some reason, in this situation, I feel like going out among people, I'm just gonna be nothing but I don't knows, and that's gonna like I just like want to save myself the trouble of like the frustration, right? Because it's just like I don't know anything. Like, when it comes, I don't know.
Right, but
If
I
you
don't think
can,
you can
if you
figure
can
this out on
acknowledge
your
that you
own.
don't know something and you feel like that's a strength that you have, where does the frustration come in?
The frustration comes in if this is all for the if this is mostly for the sake of like not for the sake, but if this is going to be a thing to like, because I'm trying to find connection with somebody else, I want to be with somebody else, right? But I can't, but I don't know anything worth being with because I'm curious or question or whatever, right? Or like I don't know what's going on.
You don't have
Then
to
it's
know
like,
anything
what's the
other than
point of bringing it up? Because like I don't know anything.
I think
okay.
this is something you can't figure out on your own, though. Like, you can
can't.
sit in your apartment and you can think and think, but you can't get much further on your own.
But the thing is, I
No.
think I'm using the being alone. This is I know this is like, oh, go to therapy, but like it's like I think I'm using. I think it's like the not knowing or the aloneness and the lack of connection from not knowing because I'm not putting myself around people is almost like punishment or like cyclical that I'm using it for myself, right? It's like I don't know, and it's like, well, this is why like I don't get to know.
Yeah.
And this is from somebody that needs the know, that loves the know, that I like to have. I like, as much as I talk about not always speaking in absolutes, for myself, for a lot of things, I need absolutes. And also I can recognize that you do not need absolutes right now. Like, you need to let go of, and if you can, like, let go of feeling like you need all of the answers before you can start. You just can't have, especially when it comes to like exploring different parts of who you are, because we are growing and changing every single day. You cannot have all of the answers as part of your discovery of learning something new about yourself. Like, mathematically, that doesn't make any sense, right? Like, I want to learn something new about myself, but I have to know all the answers about how it's going to end up. That doesn't work. So the minute that you decide that you want to discover something new about yourself, because you could go through all of this and discover that, yeah, you are good with just the P, but you still have to find out, you still have to stumble along the way. I think that also, and this might not be anything that's a conscious thing, but I know that there's a lot of like biphobia, I'll call it that, where people are not understanding that somebody exploring their sexuality is not a queer baiting thing, and it's not just an experience. Like, a lot of times it's just something that you're trying to discover, because on the flip side too, like, a lot of times we don't know what we don't know until we know that we don't know it. And as long as that communication is there, back to community, as long as communication is there, like, I don't know what I'm feeling, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know that, if we're talking about an individual person, I know that in this moment I'm attracted to you and I would like to have some skin to skin time with you. And I don't know what that means after, but I know in this moment, if again, you find somebody that is trustworthy and goes through that with you, that's part of your journey.
Also,
And then
if you're worried and thinking about like, queer baiting, which is like maybe not even a real thing, to be honest, like I think that if you're concerned about that, you're not going to do it. Like you're already being aware of not trying to like, I don't know, appropriate like queerness, but you having that consciousness means that you're not going to do it. You're not going to be like posting and like, having sponsored deals being like, I might be gay and here's this, you know what I mean? Like, I just think that you are so, conscientious that I don't think that you're going to misstep there.
Like my intention is never to cause harm. I'm not going to suddenly forget about that to like
That
cause
right
harm
there,
here.
that right there speaks volumes.
Yeah.
Like you have the core character. Your character is driving all of this to begin with. And if your character is screaming, I don't want to cause harm to anybody else or even to yourself, that's going to direct you in the right way. It's a lot of just breaking out of everything that you thought that you knew. Like everything that you thought you knew.
But to your point too, like someone in the comments mentioned about like how like one of the damages about like dating so like heteronormatively over the years is that it's so much about like when I was talking about not feeling like enough or not experience or I don't know anything, so I should just stay in the house before I just go in there like a kind of shop. And they were saying that like, you like the conversation about like, oh, what do you bring to the table? Like you don't gotta do nothing. Like like it's like if and I think it to your point, I'm also like, this is gonna sound nuts, and I know like everyone's gonna be like, there are no rules, but it's also like, what are the rules? Because like the rules that I've been dating under for the time that I've been dating, it's like
I think if you operate under the rule of causing no harm, that's the best rule to pay attention to. That's the best rule to pay attention to, because if you are intending to make sure that harm is not caused to anybody, that is going to fuel your communication, that is going to fuel your need to ask questions, to have questions asked to yourself, to be aware of what's going on, that you're not just running into it and being a bull in a china shop, that you're not blocking yourself from anything else because you know that what you're doing is from a place of growth, a place of understanding. That's really the only rule. You don't cause harm. There's no abuse, which is under the harm umbrella. There's no lying or misrepresentation. That's a hard word. That's a hard word for Omo. Underneath that harm, all this stuff. As long as you have that driving force, you're following the rules. And as simplistic as it might sound, is you just have to get out of your way. You have to let go of this thought that you can't go to certain places, you can't reach out to certain people, that you can't ask certain questions because I don't know if I am for sure queer. How are you going to know? How are you going to know? What'd you say?
I wish you could try contact improv. I feel like contact improv would open a lot. Contact improv isn't like regular improv at all. It's just like when you're with a group of people and you just kind of make an amoeba together, and like you just touch when you feel like touching, and you get, it can be sensual, but then it can be completely platonic, and someone will put a hand on your ankle, and so then you put your hand on this wrist, and like everyone in there is like, let's be an amoeba, and it's like sensual, but it's also not at all. Right. I don't know.
Well, I like that.
I think it's about the physicality of the body, right? And like experiencing body, I think it can be a sensual thing without it being like explicit or vulgar in any kind of a way, but it's like the appreciation of like the movement of the body and then movement in actual connection, right? Because it's like, I'm assuming with the way that you were describing it, at least when you move, like someone's going to respond to that in some kind of way, and your movement is in response to somebody else. And it's kind of like in when we're so used to our movement being so independent of each other, to have movement that's like, but then still honors you because you're not moving in any way that you don't want to, right? And it's whatever is kind of flowing into you, to the point where me and Ceci were talking about earlier about like, oh, I'm so glad that I like when you feel like a different person, because of like moving between two people.
Yeah.
That is what kind of the contact improv made me think of like, oh, is there more space in your life for things? And then that reminded me of other thoughts in the comments of someone was like, oh, you should find a play party. And then somebody else was like, no, that's too much for her right now. And then somebody else was like, you should do a dance party instead. And somebody was like, queer dance parties. So like, I don't know. I feel like that was an interesting way of getting there, of like opening it up, finding safe ways of opening it up for me that thousands, but like are moving me in the direction that I clearly want to be in, so I can get out of my own way more.
Yes. And yes. And you're in such a unique position with that touch starvation piece that you're in. It's going to be vitally important for you to pay attention to what touch does to you. If you are touch starved, then when you get that touch, it's going to have everything like rushing at you. And you know this, it's going to come in every single direction. And
I'm avoiding I'm avoiding that like it's the disease.
Right. You're going to feel it from your head to your toes, right? Like you're going to feel it everywhere. And that's going to come with like, what do I feel about this? Do I like it? Do I not like it? Am I turned on? Am I not turned on? Like what's going on? So like easing into that portion would be good. You know, spending time with people and just, even if it's a friend, something. This is very generic right now. I think that my big advice is that when you do experience touch, that you give yourself some grace and you pay attention to, is it everywhere or is it centralized? Like, is it localized?
Mayte, have you done any work in like somatics with like a somatic practitioner or a somatic therapist?
No.
The reason I ask is because somatics, if you're familiar with the word psychosomatic, for anyone who doesn't know, psychosomatic is how something in your mind is affecting something in your body. So somatic is of and relating to the body and especially the nervous system. And I relate to a lot in a lot of the things we're talking about specific to like overthinking as you're trying to self-discover. And overthinkers should get into somatic work. I've been working with a practitioner for a while now, and it has been very helpful over many days. But a significant portion of it is getting me a little bit less, like a little bit out of my head and more into my body. Because especially with the neurodivergence, there's probably been 3 to 5 times during this live, because we've been on for like 2 hours and a quarter so far, that I have realized that I'm so excited and engaged that I'm holding tension and I haven't taken a deep breath, and I've had to go, okay.
You have to remind yourself.
Especially with ADHD and also OCD and a lot of like in the head. And so sometimes when if I'm in a dating situation, in some sort of romantic sexual intimacy situation, oftentimes I will ruminate on possibilities, things that could go wrong, like my anxiety will take off instead of being connected to what my body's actually feeling in that moment. I will create tension and anxiety in my body instead of being like, ooh, am I into this person at all? Am I maybe not into this person at all? And I'm not listening to it. I know that we talked about like orgasm and like all this stuff. I have had some hangups in my head where I think in part due to some scarcity of affection and dating situations, especially through the pandemic and like a kind of small town and being a queer, there have been times where like the breaks in between make me feel like a lot of scarcity, and I will feel like maybe I'm missing out or disappointed if the possibility of it doesn't turn into the actual intimacy or something like happening and following through. So I had a situation some weeks ago where I hung out with someone who I'd had a really good vibe with, and we had a hang, and then they initiated like they asked about a kiss, and I was like, I literally said something like, bring it on in, like literally my least smooth moment of like my, I've never been so clunky.
Come on over, partner.
It was rough.
Come on, buddy.
Come on, pal. I hope that this person isn't on TikTok. I don't think they're on social media, because I'm going to talk a tiny smack real quick about how this kiss went. So I said something super awkward. We kissed, and their tongue did a strange thing in my mouth where it kind of went, oh, la, 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 and I could feel how strong and muscular this tongue was. And I was like, that's not hot. And and here's the real, obviously this kiss is not going well, but here's the messed up part in little Cece's head, okay? This happens, and then I like leave with one more weird kiss where they do this thing again, and then I go, maybe I should sleep with them anyway to see if that's better. And then I was like, hold on a minute here. Hold on just a second here. What the F was that? And I really sat with myself and I was like, okay, what are we feeling? Do I want to be physically intimate? And my whole body was like, no. And I was like, great, answered, done,
Perfect.
solved. But many, many times in the past,
Yes.
partly due to scarcity and partly due to some feeling of failure if I don't accomplish this mutual attraction, this attention, this dopamine, this whatever, I felt some sense of disappointment. And this was the first time that I really slowed down and went, what is my body feeling? And arousal was at a 0. Even I started to get an ick remembering that kiss later. And I was like, bitch, why would you consider going further with this person? Also,
I just have a quick question.
Yes, please.
The way that you described that movement.
Which one?
The tongue with the kiss.
Oh, yes.
Why would that feel good anywhere else? I'm
You
also
want it at other places?
A tongue
I'm
like
also a firm believer that
sometimes
it's
a tongue
likely
was
not going to feel good anywhere else. Like there's there's a direct correlation.
But that tongue felt like it was doing push-ups. Like that could come in handy.
Yes.
There was a
But
little
if that's like
curiosity.
if it's from 0 to that move, I feel like there should be like
See,
like a 5-speed.
Trust me, I
dropping
get
the clutch.
I get that what I thought was not the right thought. We caught ourselves.
I'm proud of you. I'm so proud of you.
That is dangerous. That's dangerous. That's very, very dangerous. And I have, a couple of years ago, this is going to sound bad, but I have a list of everyone who I've hooked up with because it started as just like dudes. And I was like, whatever. And then I added in the queers. And then I actually went back and I made a checklist next to each of these experiences. And I was like, how many of these were influenced by alcohol? How many times would I maybe have not engaged?
Were you at my therapy session yesterday? Because
bitch, shut up.
Wow,
you're talking too much
about this.
Trust me, I know, because I and many people around me are doing a lot of like, we're all suspicious of alcohol right now. We're like, what is your purpose? I don't know if I like it, because we're all realizing that like it can be really terrible and dangerous. So I went through this list. It was a massive amount of them. It was the majority of them that I put a check mark next to, where I was like, alcohol did influence this. I was inebriated upon the beginning and maybe many times after, and it started it. And I made a really clear intention with myself that I didn't want that to continue. And I really watched that. And that was a step towards really honoring my body and my desires and building trust with myself. Because something I think we don't talk about in general is like breaking trust with yourself. When you say something like, oh, I'm gonna, I don't know, something like go on a diet, I'm not gonna go back to this ex, oh, I'm gonna be done with this in 5 minutes, and you don't do those things, you are breaking trust with yourself, and your body is cluing into that. And I've broken my own trust around attraction many, many times. And so that was a big rebuild for me, was like, I need to take a second, and instead of put a thought about what I should do, because there's conscious thought going on. Like, it's not like I'm not thinking, but the thought is from an old habit and an old method of survival and comfort that I now know better than. And I don't need that anymore. And now I want to listen to what this body desires. And what I found out that day with that swirly tongue human was, it's not this, and it's not you. And that built a little bit of that bridge of trust back with myself. And I think that that's a huge thing that builds security, so that you just in general feel good, and that other people can't shake you as much if they reject you, which I know we've talked about, because rejection sensitivity is a big deal for me too. And I'm constantly working on building security and being less insecure, because I'm very insecure. Rejection feels like I'm going to die a lot of the time. And as long as we
It's a
honor
huge thing.
ourselves that, it's huge.
You describing that experience is just a reminder that even in the most queerest of person, there's still that little bit of residual heteronormativity. It's always there, and it's something that you kind of consciously have to be aware of. And when you start to make that connection of mind and body and pay attention that they might not always be on the same page, that ties back into that, right? And I think that a lot of times we've been taught to ignore our body and pay more attention to our head, because our head's supposed to drive everything, which is not always true. Especially if we've been fed all this stuff in our head. So letting go of that is also really big. Also, heteronormativity is rooted in white supremacy. You know how I feel about that. So if that's not a reason enough.
I had a swirly tongue punch kiss once.
When I love that.
For my freshman year, I dated a boy named Colton Shuford, who was 4 inches shorter than me, and I met because he grinded up against me at a Sweet 16. And he spelled the alphabet in my mouth. And in that moment,
I would become illiterate.
Well, yes, exactly. But at that moment, you know,
at that moment, I couldn't read no more.
I had been queer Caroline knew she liked girls, but thought, hey, maybe there's a chance that I'll like men too. And I literally thought his tongue is in my mouth, and I said, okay, so I'm a lesbian. How will I hide this the rest of my life? Turns out I'm bi, and a very handsome Danish boy named Benjamin taught me that the very next year. But that's an example of like, don't sell it, don't write it off too quick, because maybe it's just a person.
I feel like I have a parallel story to yours. My sophomore year, I went to my homecoming with a boy named Solomon Fortune, who was also
called out.
Who is also?
I mean, that's a name.
And last
name. Solomon Fortune. If I can find the picture. I did say
Colton Cooper, didn't I?
You got to think, this is 1995. So my hair was a French twist with some nice curls along the side. I had a nice homecoming dress, I think that we got at JCPenney, which was nice. But he took me to homecoming, and we had our date. Like, he came to pick me up, and everything was super fucking awkward. And he brought me back, and on my front porch, he went to kiss me, and his tongue almost removed my tonsils. And like, I mean, and he came in like, you know, like,
yikes.
So at that moment, I also had the thought that perhaps I am a lesbian. What made it stick for me is when I had a kiss with a woman, and I was like, yes.
I have a question. I would like to ask Caroline, as the other person who's been doing a lot of kissing, maybe of all the genders, have you ever kissed a woman or a non-cis man that's ever been as bad as your worst handful of cis dude kisses? Because for me, no.
I've been with my now husband since I was 16. So
okay, I'm the case study. I will boldly.
I've only been with him. That's a case study.
I've had a bad kisser that was a woman. There are just some people.
It's just less affronting, the kind of kissing that
it is.
Have
and I think that my experience too is that I've had experience with telling a woman, like, this is not, let's try this. And that's where my more dominant side come on. Like, we're gonna turn your head this way.
Odd.
I love kissing. I love kissing. It's one of my favorite things to do. And I refuse
to have a submissives in here.
With the tongue though, because I don't want even a little bit of that. I want mouth closed every time.
No, I love a good deep tongue kiss.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember what I want. What I like.
I mean, it's been a minute for me too, and I have not had as much time away from touch as you have, Mayte, but it has allowed me to get more in touch with my body, and everybody can interpret that the way that they want to. But it has allowed me to remember.
I would like to
what
interpret
I
it the way that you want me to interpret it. Tell me.
All of a sudden, Portia's account gets banned.
Mayte, you keep saying that you don't know how to start, but I feel like you are revved and ready to go in the right situation. Like, you are not holding back. You are flirting, and I feel like we just got to let you loose in the right arena, and you're going to have a great time.
But learning...
maybe you need a play party, actually.
It might work. I want to tie it back to what you're talking about, like somatic thinking and everything.
Oh, yeah.
But reminding myself what I like, and by being my own lover, that's a good conversation to have with myself. It also allows me to get out of my head. And this is encouragement to anybody that's in here. And then I'm going to jump off because I'm heading in a direction that's going to get me in trouble. When you are finding pleasure, the minute you get your head out of the picture and you listen to your body, that is going to amplify everything. Like, there's a lot of places where your head should be involved, and a climax is not always it. Just trust me with that. Your body is doing the majority, like 98% of the work.
No, I got you. Whenever I get Portia maybe a little flustered, the chat keeps telling me to do more. So they were telling me to speak to you in Spanish, and they were like,
absolutely not.
Say something in Spanish, lock it down, Mayte. Like, finish. I was like, what are y'all talking about? No, but the other thing is that they read me for filth, and they're like, someone was like, Mayte might be emboldened by the barrier of a screen, which is why I'm flirting right now. And that could be
it. That could be it. Like, there's a whole screen in between everything. But that's my advice that I'm giving to you all. Chase your bliss, chase your joy. Like, in any way that looks,
opt in.
Like, honestly, fuck what you've been told, fuck what you've heard. If it is something that you want to do, that you feel safe doing it, and that you're not going to cause harm doing it, fucking do it.
I mean, I love even how you put it about, like, being your own lover. Because even for me, like, I think about my own, like, solitary sexual experiences, and I hold back from that also. Like, someone in the comments, I talk a lot when I go live. I be talking too much. But somebody was like, have you told Portia and Ceci about, like, your solo journey? They're like, because they'll have thoughts about that. And it's like, I remember asking people, like, oh, when you, like, self-pleasure, and I know there's different ways of experiencing pleasure or whatever, and people use toys in a variety of ways, but I was like, people really, like, insert them? And I was like, and people were like, yes, that's why they're insertable shaped. Like, that's what, baby, like, what's going on here? And then I was like, no. But I was like, that's not too sexual? And they were like, what are you?
But here's the deal. You sparked another topic. When you're your own lover, sometimes pleasure looks different. What I do for myself is different than I want somebody else to do. Can I see? No.
Sorry, it was right there.
The way so slick.
You are ready. You are ready to do
I have the vapors.
Why you listen to play party room, baby? You are ready.
Look at Caroline.
Caroline is in shock.
Caroline's like, I'm sorry, what now?
Who's not gay?
Yeah.
It's not even dark out. Like, this is the shit that I post on my TikTok after dark. It's light as fuck out.
It's fully bright. But, you know, if that is what comes out of your mouth when Portia puts on the Riz, then perhaps that's, you know, that came out before you could possibly have considered.
You have answers. Mayte. You are gay.
Like, slick in the mouth. That just... And if I were,
Mayte is like, Mayte is one big intrusive thought, actually factual.
and it's all on the outside too. Like you're like,
That's unbelievable. Your chat is incredible. Your people are amazing.
I had a lot of kids learning a lot of new stuff in here. The children are learning today.
It has been identified in my chat, Mayte, that you are likely a top, and I have to say, I might agree.
That comment?
I think I disagree.
Bullshit. At least a solid switch. At least.
Okay.
I'm still gonna go.
You are thinking a little. Maybe
I'm
don't
bratty.
say it.
I'm bratty.
That tracks. Yeah.
We are
so I don't think I'm a no.
We
a lot from the bottom.
We are gonna.
You can talk from the bottom.
This.
Bratties can be tops too.
We are gonna talk about this at some point. Not today. Another day.
Not today.
It is.
But we'll come back to that. But yeah, no.
This 7:52, 8:52. It's light outside, and this is a conversation.
Listen, who needs the sun to dip out from the conversation? They're included too.
Clearly nobody.
Then you can see more.
Because that's what we need.
That's what everybody wants, isn't it?
I know. Somebody said yes, the bratty to soft top pipeline is real. Fuck.
Bratty.
Damn.
Bratty. Huh.
Bratty to soft top. That's a real pipeline.
Wow.
I think I'm on it.
You're on some kind of pipeline, I'm telling you.
I don't even know
I'm trying to be on somebody's pipeline.
There it is.
These are words, right? These are
you know
words.
What? That
indeed.
statement is gender inclusive. That does not have to stick with just. That's another. I'm going. This is
I've said enough.
We've done enough damage to the live sphere of TikTok.
I do want to say, Ceci, I think that we've done good work here. Caroline, I appreciate you. You guys can say.
Are you reporting back to like the gay agenda somewhere on the listserv? We're like,
yeah,
we're getting Mayte.
Well, I am the council, so I will report back to myself. I think that you should have another meeting like next week. Maybe think about like what's happened today. Keep reading. I'm just gonna say like, literally one last thing because you were talking about your books and everything. Remember that everything that is written in fiction is rooted in some sort of reality. So if you're identifying even with the fiction book,
I'll read some more pleasure, some pleasure activism, and then we'll link this back up. The quartet for next week.
Read that book. What your mind is thinking now, and you're gonna have a completely different viewpoint, I think. And I feel like you will find yourself wanting to chase pleasure, chase bliss, chase joy, and finding out ways on how to do that, which is going to then lead to addressing the touch starvation. Like you're honestly opening a big door. So I'm proud of you.
Careful, Portia. She's going to show up in Chicago and open your door.
Come and knock on my door. All right. With that, my lovelies.
Bye. Thanks for joining.
Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.